I never thought my son's 10th birthday would end with me locking the front door behind my own parents. My name is Grace Walker. I am 36 years old, and for my entire life I have been the fixer. I was the one who kept the peace. I was the one who swallowed every insult just to keep the family together. But that ended last Saturday. It was supposed to be a happy day. Nathan wanted a pirate party. He had spent weeks gluing gold coins onto cardboard chests. He was so proud. But the moment my brother Mark and his family walked in, the happiness died. My nephew Tyler didn't just tease Nathan. He humiliated him in front of his friends. He made my son look small. I looked at my parents. I waited for them to step in. I waited for them to defend their grandson. Instead, they laughed. They actually stood there and laughed while my son held back tears. That was the moment something inside me finally broke. I threw them all out. Later that night, my mother sent me a text message. "You're cut off." She thought she was hurting me. She didn't realize that she had just started a war she couldn't win. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Grace Walker, a 36-year-old single mother living in a quiet suburban house in a small town. To understand why I locked that door, you have to understand the money. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about what the money represented. It was about 36 years of being the invisible child. I have always been the responsible one. In every family, there seems to be one person who is the designated fixer. That was me. If the internet went down at my parents' house, I was the one who drove over to fix it. If mom forgot to buy a gift for a cousin's wedding, I was the one who went to the store, bought it, wrapped it, and signed her name on the card. I did these things because I thought that was how you earned love. I thought that if I was useful enough, eventually, they would look at me the way they looked at my brother, Mark. Mark was the golden boy. He was 2 years older than me. He was loud, charming, and irresponsible. He made mistakes and my parents laughed them off. "Oh, that's just Mark being Mark," my dad would say, slapping him on the back. When I made a mistake, it was a lecture. It was a disappointment. 2 years ago, that dynamic stopped being just emotional and became financial. My parents ran a plumbing supply business. My grandfather started it, and my dad took it over. It was their pride and joy. But my dad wasn't great with numbers. He was good at shaking hands and having lunch with contractors, but he was terrible at managing cash flow. I remember the night they asked me for the money. It was a Tuesday. I had just put Nathan to bed. My husband, David, had passed away 3 years prior in a car accident. I was a single mom, working as a remote project manager for a tech firm. I had savings, but that money was for Nathan. It was his college fund. It was our safety net. My parents came over to my small house. They sat at my kitchen table. My mom looked pale. My dad wouldn't meet my eyes. "We're in trouble, Gracie," my dad said. He used the nickname he only used when he wanted something. "The business. We hit a rough patch. Suppliers are holding shipments. If we don't pay them by Friday, we go under." I felt a cold knot in my stomach. "How much?" I asked. $38,000, my mom whispered. I choked on my tea. $38,000, Dad, that's a huge amount of money. "It's just a loan," he said quickly. He reached across the table and covered my hand with his. His hand was rough and warm. I wanted so badly to believe him. "Just for 6 months. Once the big contract with the city comes through in the spring, we'll pay you back with interest. I promise, Gracie. You're saving the family legacy." The family legacy. That phrase was their favorite weapon. I looked at my mom. She had tears in her eyes. "Please, Grace, we don't have anyone else to ask." "Mark, you know Mark doesn't have that kind of cash." Of course Mark didn't. Mark spent his money as soon as he got it. I was the saver. I was the boring one. I wrote the check. My hand shook as I signed it. It was almost half of my savings. 6 months, I said. "Dad, I need this back. This is Nathan's future." "On my life," he said. He hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe. For a moment, I felt like the favorite child. I felt like the hero. That was 2 years ago. 6 months passed. I asked about the money. "Cash flow is still tight," Dad said, not looking at me. "Give us another month." Another month passed, then another. Then the spending started. It started small. My mom came to Sunday dinner wearing a new designer watch. I knew that brand. It cost at least $500. When I asked about it, she waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, this old thing." It was a gift. Then it got bigger. They leased a new truck for the business. A top-of-the-line pickup with leather seats and a premium sound system. "It's a business expense," Dad said when I stared at it in the driveway. Need to look professional for the clients. But the breaking point, or what should have been the breaking point, was the cruise. Last year, for their anniversary, they booked a 2-week Mediterranean cruise. They posted photos on Facebook every day. Photos of them drinking expensive wine in Italy. Photos of them on a private boat in Greece. I sat in my living room, scrolling through the pictures on my phone. I felt sick. I was clipping coupons to buy groceries. I was driving a 7-year-old sedan that needed new brakes. And there were my parents, spending my son's college money on a European vacation. When they got back, I confronted them. I went to their house. I stood in their living room, surrounded by the souvenirs they had brought back. How could you? I asked. You owe me $38,000. You said you were broke. My dad sighed like I was being unreasonable. Grace, don't be dramatic. Everyone needs a break. We were stressed. The business is doing better, but we need to maintain our image. We'll pay you. Stop counting pennies, it's unbecoming. Unbecoming. That was the word that stuck with me. It was unbecoming to ask for my own money back. It was unbecoming to expect them to keep a promise. I looked at Mark. He was there, sitting on the couch, eating a sandwich. He had a new set of golf clubs leaning against the wall. Did you borrow money from Mark? I asked. Mark laughed. No way, sis, I'm smart with my cash. My mom chimed in. Mark has his own expenses, Grace. He has a family to support. I have a family too, I said. I have Nathan. Nathan is fine, Mom said. He's just one boy. Mark has Tyler. Tyler needs private camps. He needs tutoring. It's different. It wasn't different, but in their eyes it was. Mark's son Tyler was the heir. He was the next man of the family. Nathan was just Grace's son. I left their house that day without a check. I drove home crying. I promised myself I would stop helping them. I promised myself I would demand the money, but I didn't. I kept waiting. I kept hoping they would do the right thing. I continued to handle their payroll software because Dad couldn't figure it out. I continued to negotiate with their suppliers when they got into arguments. I kept the business running from the sidelines, unpaid and unappreciated, because I was terrified that if the business failed, I would never see my money again. I was trapped. I was the bank, the free labor, and the punching bag. And then came Nathan's birthday. Saturday morning started perfectly. The sun was shining. The air was warm but not humid. It was the kind of day you pray for when you plan an outdoor party. Nathan was vibrating with excitement. He was turning 10, double digits. To him, this was a massive milestone. For months, he had been obsessed with pirates. We had watched every pirate movie. We had read books about treasure maps. We spent weeks making the decorations. We didn't have a big budget, so we made everything by hand. We took old cardboard boxes and painted them to look like treasure chests. We went to the dollar store and bought bags of chocolate gold coins. I baked the cake myself, a 3-layer chocolate cake with black frosting and a skull and crossbones made of white fondant. It wasn't professional, but Nathan looked at it like it was a masterpiece. It's perfect, Mom, he had told me that morning, hugging my waist. By 1 p.m., the backyard was full of kids. 10-year-old boys were running around with foam swords, screaming and laughing. It was chaotic and loud and wonderful. I felt a rare moment of peace. I had done it. I had given him a good day. Then, at 2 p.m., the driveway gravel crunched. My parents' large SUV pulled in. Behind them was Mark's flashy sports car. They were late, as usual. My stomach tightened. It always did when they arrived. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked to the gate to greet them. Happy birthday, my mom called out. She was wearing a white dress, which seemed like a risky choice for a kid's party, but she looked immaculate. Dad was wearing his weekend plumbing tycoon outfit, polo shirt, and expensive sunglasses. Mark got out of his car with his wife, Melissa, and their son, Tyler. Tyler was 11, just a year older than Nathan, but he was bigger, louder, and meaner. Where's the beer? Mark asked before he even said hello to me. In the cooler by the porch, I said. Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Tyler didn't say hello. He pushed past me into the yard. He looked around at the cardboard treasure chests and the handmade happy birthday banner. Wow, Tyler said loudly. This looks like garbage. The music was playing, so not everyone heard it, but I did. Nathan did. Nathan ran over, smiling. Hi, Tyler, look, I made a map. We're going to do a treasure hunt. Tyler sneered. Treasure hunts are for babies. This whole party is for babies. Pirates, seriously, that is so cringe. Nathan's smile faltered. It's cool, he said, his voice a little smaller. We have foam swords. Foam swords, Tyler mocked. He grabbed one of the swords from a smaller boy nearby. He bent it in half until it snapped. Cheap junk. I looked at Mark. He was already at the cooler, cracking open a beer. He wasn't watching his son. I looked at my parents. They were sitting in the lawn chairs I had set up, chatting with each other. They saw Tyler snap the sword. They didn't say a word. Tyler, I said, stepping forward. Please be nice. It's Nathan's birthday. Tyler rolled his eyes at me. I'm just being honest, Aunt Grace, this is lame. I took a deep breath. Keep the peace, I told myself, for Nathan. Just try to have fun, I said stiffly. The next hour was a slow torture. Every time Nathan tried to organize a game, Tyler sabotaged it. During the treasure hunt, Tyler found the clues first and ripped them up so the other kids couldn't read them. When they played Pin the Patch on the Pirate, Tyler drew inappropriate pictures on the poster with a Sharpie he had in his pocket. The other parents started to notice. I saw them whispering. I saw them pulling their kids away from Tyler. I was mortified. I went over to my dad. Dad, can you say something to Tyler? He's ruining the games. My dad took a sip of his iced tea. Oh, Grace, let boys be boys. He's just high-spirited, he's a leader. He likes to take charge. He's not taking charge, I said, my voice trembling slightly. He's being a bully. Don't use that word, my mom snapped. Tyler is not a bully. He's just sophisticated. He's used to more organized events. This is all very homemade. He's probably just bored. Homemade. She said it like it was a dirty word, like my effort was an embarrassment. I walked away before I screamed. I went to the kitchen to get the cake. I lit the candles. I took a moment to compose myself. Just the cake, I thought. We'll do the cake, open gifts, and then they will leave. I carried the cake out. Everyone started singing Happy Birthday. Nathan sat at the head of the table. He was wearing the pirate hat he had made himself. It was construction paper and glue, lopsided and covered in glitter. He loved that hat. As I set the cake down, Tyler walked up behind Nathan. Make a wish, someone shouted. Nathan closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. Before he could blow out the candles, Tyler reached out and snatched the pirate hat off Nathan's head. Nice hat, dork, Tyler yelled. He didn't just take it. He spun around and threw it. He threw it hard. It sailed over the fence and landed on the roof of the garage. The singing stopped. The backyard went dead silent. Nathan sat there. His hands reached up to his bare head. His face turned bright red. He didn't cry. I think he was too shocked to cry. He just looked down at his lap. Tyler, I shouted. I looked at Mark. Mark was chuckling. Nice arm, kid, Mark yelled. Did you see that throw? Quarterback material. I looked at my parents. My dad was smiling. My mom was covering her mouth, giggling. It was a funny throw, Grace, my mom said, seeing my face. It's just a paper hat. Don't be so sensitive. Look at Nathan, he knows it's a joke. I looked at Nathan. He wasn't laughing, he was shaking. He stood up abruptly and ran. He ran past the swing set, past the shed, disappearing into the narrow space between the shed and the back fence. Nathan, I called. I turned to my family. Are you kidding me? You think that's funny? Oh, lighten up, Melissa, Mark's wife said. She was scrolling on her phone. Tyler is just playing. Nathan needs to toughen up if he's going to make it in the real world. I felt something snap in my chest. It wasn't a loud snap. It was a quiet, heavy thud. It was the sound of the final tether breaking. Excuse me, I said. I walked to the shed. I found Nathan sitting on the dirt, hugging his knees. He was trying so hard not to make a sound, but his shoulders were shaking. I knelt down in the dirt beside him. I didn't care about my dress. Nate, I whispered. He looked up at me. His face was wet. Mom, he choked out. Did I do something wrong? Why does he hate me? My heart shattered into a million pieces. Then those pieces instantly reformed into something harder, something sharp like steel. No, baby, I said. You did nothing wrong. You are perfect. And I am going to fix this. I kissed his forehead. I stood up. I wiped the dirt off my knees. I wasn't Grace the peacekeeper anymore. I wasn't Grace the doormat. I walked back to the party. I walked straight to the Bluetooth speaker and pressed the power button. The music cut out instantly. The sudden silence was heavy. Everyone turned to look at me. The other parents, the kids, and my family. My face felt hot, but my hands were cold. I felt remarkably calm. It was the calm of a soldier who has just decided to pull the pin on a grenade. I stood in the center of the patio. Mark, Melissa, Tyler, Mom. Dad, I said their names clearly. Get out. My mom blinked. She laughed nervously. What? Get out, I repeated. My voice didn't shake. Leave my house, now. Mark set his beer down on the table with a clack. Whoa, Grace, take a pill. What's your problem? My problem, I said, pointing at the empty chair where Nathan had been sitting, is that you just allowed your son to humiliate mine. And you laughed, you all laughed. It was a joke, Mark shouted. He stepped toward me, trying to use his size to intimidate me. He had done this our whole lives. God, you are so dramatic, you're ruining the party. The party is over for you, I said. I looked him in the eye. I realized for the first time that he wasn't scary. He was just a bully who never grew up. Take your family and leave. My dad stood up. His face was red. Grace, you are making a scene in front of your guests. This is embarrassing. Apologize to your brother. No, I said. The word hung in the air. I had never said no to him, not like this. I am not the one who should be embarrassed, I said, looking around at the other parents. They were watching with wide eyes. Some of them looked supportive. One mom gave me a small nod. You came into my home, you ate my food, and you treated my son like dirt. I am done. Get out before I call the police. You wouldn't dare, Mom hissed. Her eyes were narrow slits. We are your parents. Then start acting like it, I shot back. I walked to the back gate and threw it open. I stood there, waiting. Melissa grabbed her purse. She looked furious. Come on, Mark, let's go. She's clearly having a breakdown. She's unstable. Unstable, I repeated. Sure, whatever helps you sleep. Tyler looked confused. He wasn't used to consequences. He looked at his dad, waiting for Mark to fix it. But Mark just glared at me, grabbed a handful of chips from the bowl, and stomped toward the gate. As they passed me, my mother stopped. She leaned in close so only I could hear. You will regret this, she whispered. You need us? I really don't, I said. They walked out. I slammed the gate shut. I locked the latch. I turned back to the party. My hands were shaking now. The adrenaline was fading. I am so sorry, everyone, I said to the other parents. Please stay. There's plenty of cake. The other parents were amazing. They rallied. The mom who had nodded at me started cutting the cake. Another dad went and got a ladder to retrieve the pirate hat from the roof. I went back to the shed and brought Nathan out. When he saw the hat back on the table and his friends eating cake, he smiled. It was a weak smile, but it was there. The rest of the party was quiet but nice. We didn't talk about what happened. We just let the kids play. That evening, after Nathan was asleep and the mess was cleaned up, I sat on my couch with a glass of wine. The house was silent. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. I cannot believe you treated us like that. We have done everything for you. You are ungrateful and cruel. Until you apologize to Mark and to us, you are cut off from this family. Don't expect invites to Christmas. Don't expect anything. I stared at the screen. Cut off. She thought she was punishing me. She thought I would panic. She thought I would call her crying, begging for forgiveness, just like I had done when I was 16. But I wasn't 16. I was 36. I had a job, I had a home, and I had a ledger in my head that was dripping with red ink. I didn't feel sad. I felt a surge of power. I typed my reply. My thumbs moved fast. Good. I don't want to be part of a family that bullies a 10-year-old. And since we are being formal, let's talk about the $38,000 you still owe me. I expect a payment plan by Monday. I hit send. I watched the 3 little dots appear, then disappear, then appear again, then stop. She didn't reply. I put the phone down. I knew this wasn't over. They would ignore the money request. They would pretend it didn't exist, just like they had for 2 years. They thought they held the power because they were the business owners, and I was just the daughter. But they forgot something. I was the one who set up their online banking. I was the one who managed their vendor accounts because Dad lost the passwords. I was the administrator on their business email server because Mom deleted important emails by accident. I stood up and walked to my laptop. I opened it. The screen glowed blue in the dark living room. If they wanted to cut me off, I would show them what being cut off really felt like. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I wasn't plotting revenge. Revenge is emotional. This was business. This was a correction. They had told me I was cut off. Fine. That meant I was no longer their daughter. I was now just a creditor. And creditors don't care about family harmony. Creditors care about assets. Sunday passed in a blur. I spent the day with Nathan. We built a Lego set. We ordered pizza. I didn't check my phone. I didn't look at social media. I stayed in my bubble. Monday morning, I dropped Nathan off at school. As soon as he was out of the car, I drove home and made a pot of strong coffee. I sat down at my desk at 8:30 a.m. Step 1, the accountant. I called Mr. Henderson. He had been the family accountant for 20 years. He was a nice man, elderly, who always sent me a Christmas card. "Grace," he answered cheerfully. "How are you, dear? How was the birthday party?" "It was eventful, Mr. Henderson," I said. "I'm calling with some business news. I need to inform you that I am resigning from all informal duties regarding my parents' company, effective immediately." There was a pause. "Oh, is everything all right?" "No," I said. "I am stepping back. Also, I need to formally register a debt dispute. As you know, I loaned the company $38,000 2 years ago. I have the canceled check. I need that listed as a priority liability on the balance sheet. I'm preparing a formal demand letter." "Grace," his voice dropped, "you know their cash flow is delicate. If you demand that capital, it could trigger some issues with their credit line." "I know," I said. "I also know they bought a new truck and went to Greece. The liquidity is there, Mr. Henderson. It's just being misused. I want my loan documented today." "All right," he sighed. "I'll make a note." Step 2, the access. I logged into the company's bank portal. My name was still on the account. Years ago, when Dad was in the hospital for his hip surgery, he had added me as a signatory so I could pay the workers. He never removed me. He probably forgot. I didn't take any money. That would be theft. I wasn't a thief. But I did change the access settings. I saw the authorized users list. Mark was on there with a company credit card. I looked at the transaction history. Gas stations, golf courses, liquor stores. Mark was treating the company account like his personal piggy bank. I clicked Suspend Card. Then I looked at the auto payments. There were auto payments set up for my parents' personal bills, their cable, their car insurance, their life insurance. I canceled them all. I wasn't stealing their money. I was simply ensuring that company funds were used for company business. If they wanted to pay their personal bills, they could write a check like everyone else. Step 3, the suppliers. This was the hardest part. I had built relationships with these people. I opened my email. I drafted a generic message to the 5 main suppliers: the pipe manufacturer, the fixture company, the tool distributor. Subject: Change of contact, Walker Plumbing Supply. Dear partners. Effective immediately. I, Grace Walker, am no longer handling accounts payable or logistics for Walker Plumbing Supply. Please direct all future invoices, past due notices, and shipping inquiries directly to owner James Walker at Dad's email or Mark Walker at Mark's email. I will no longer be responsible for authorizing payments or resolving disputes. Thank you, Grace. I stared at the send button. My finger hovered over the mouse. I knew what this would do. My dad didn't check his email. He didn't know how to open PDF invoices. Mark ignored anything that looked like work. Without me filtering the noise and prioritizing the bills, the chaos would start within days. Shipments would get missed. Late fees would pile up. I thought about Nathan's face when Tyler threw his hat. I thought about my mom laughing. I clicked send. By 11 a.m., the first domino fell. My phone rang. It was Mark. I let it go to voicemail. Then a text from Mark. "Hey, card got declined at the gas station. Fix it ASAP." I didn't reply. At 11:30 a.m., my email pinged. It was an automated notification from the bank. User James Walker has attempted to log in. Password incorrect. They were trying to get in. But they couldn't remember the passwords because I was the one who always remembered them. They would have to call the bank. They would have to go through the verification process. It would take hours. At 12 p.m., my mom called. I watched the screen light up with her picture. It was a photo of us from years ago, smiling. I felt a pang of guilt. It was deep and sharp. Was I being too harsh? Was I destroying their livelihood? Then I remembered the text. "You are cut off." I turned my phone over face down. I went to the kitchen and made myself a sandwich. I ate it in silence. The house was quiet, but for the first time in years, my mind was quiet too. I wasn't worrying about their payroll. I wasn't worrying if the shipment of copper pipes would arrive on time. It wasn't my problem anymore. By 3 p.m., the tone of the messages changed. Mark, WTF Grace. The supply house says they won't release the order because the invoice is overdue. They said you told them to call Dad. Dad doesn't know what they're talking about. Mom, Grace, answer the phone. This isn't funny. We have a client waiting. We need to access the accounts. Stop playing games. I finally replied to the group chat I knew they were all looking at. I'm not playing games. You said I was cut off. I am respecting your wishes. I am no longer part of the family, which means I am no longer an employee. You are the business owners. Run your business. I blocked their numbers for the rest of the day. I knew the panic that was happening over there. I knew Dad was shouting. I knew Mom was crying. I knew Mark was kicking things, but I also knew something else. They weren't panicking because they missed me. They were panicking because they realized, for the first time, that they couldn't stand on their own 2 feet. I had been their crutch, and I had just walked away. The silence lasted for 3 days. It was a strange kind of silence. It wasn't peaceful, it was the heavy quiet before a thunderstorm breaks. I kept my phone on Do Not Disturb, but I could see the notifications piling up. Voicemails from my mom, texts from Mark, emails from the business account marked urgent. I didn't open them. I went to work. I cooked dinner for Nathan. I helped him with his math homework. For the first time in years, I was just a mother and an employee at my own job. I wasn't the shadow CEO of Walker Plumbing Supply. But you can't hide from a collapsing building forever. Eventually, the dust reaches you. On Thursday, the collapse became public. I was at the grocery store when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize, but it was local. I answered it, thinking it might be the school nurse. "Is this Grace Walker?" a deep voice asked. "Yes," I said. "This is Mike Polanski from Polanski Construction." My stomach dropped. Mike was their biggest client. He ran the large contracting firm that built half the new houses in the county. He had been buying from my dad for 30 years. "Hi, Mr. Polanski," I said, leaning against my shopping cart. "How can I help you?" "Grace, I can't get a straight answer from your father," Mike said. He sounded angry. "We have a site in the North District. We've been waiting on 3 pallets of copper piping since Monday. My guys are standing around doing nothing. That's costing me thousands a day. Your dad is telling me it's a shipping delay, but I called the distributor and they said the account is on credit hold. What is going on?" I closed my eyes. I knew exactly what was going on. The distributor hadn't been paid because I wasn't there to prioritize the check. Dad had probably ignored the invoices, assuming I had handled it, or he tried to pay it, and the bank blocked it because he messed up the login. "Mr. Polanski," I said calmly, "I don't work for Walker Plumbing anymore. I resigned on Monday." There was a long silence on the line. "You resigned?" "Yes, but you're the one who handles the logistics," he said. "You're the only one who knows the inventory codes." "I know," I said, "but I'm out. You'll have to speak to Mark or my father." "Mark," Mike scoffed. "Grace, with all due respect, Mark doesn't know a PVC pipe from a garden hose. If you're not there, I can't do business with them. I can't risk my timeline on your dad's memory and your brother's lack of focus." "I'm sorry, Mike," I said. And I really was. Mike was a good man. "I can't help you," he sighed. "All right. Thanks for being honest, Grace. Good luck." He hung up. 2 hours later, I heard the news through the grapevine. Polanski Construction had canceled their standing contract with Walker Plumbing. They moved their business to the large corporate supplier across town. That contract was 40% of my parents' revenue. 40%. Gone in a single phone call because they refused to respect me. The dominoes fell faster after that. On Friday, the school district dropped them. My dad had missed a bid deadline. I usually filled out the paperwork for the district bids 3 weeks in advance. Dad forgot. When a pipe burst in the high school gym over the weekend, the district called the emergency line. Dad didn't answer. Mark was probably golfing. The school called a competitor. By the next week, the suppliers stopped shipping entirely. I finally unblocked my mom's number on Tuesday evening. I felt strong enough to handle it. The phone rang almost instantly. "Grace," she sounded frantic. Her voice was high and thin, like she had been crying for days. "Grace, you have to come over, please. Dad is having chest pains. The business, it's all falling apart." "If Dad is having chest pains, call 911, I said. "I am not a doctor." "He's stressed," she screamed. "He's stressed because you abandoned us." Polanski left. "The bank is freezing the credit line because the receivables are down. Mark is yelling at everyone. You have to come fix it. Just come for 1 day. Please, we'll pay you." "Pay me?" I asked. "You already owe me $38,000. "We'll pay that too, just come back." I looked at Nathan. He was sitting on the floor, building a new Lego set I had bought him with the money I saved from not buying my parents' groceries that week. He looked happy. He looked peaceful. "No," I said. "What do you mean no?" Mom demanded. "We are your family. You are destroying us." "I'm not destroying anything," I said. My voice was steady. "I was the one holding it up. I was the beams and the foundation. You kicked me out, and now you're surprised the roof is falling in." "I'm not coming back, Mom. Not until I see a check for my money." "We don't have the money," she sobbed. You know we don't have the liquidity right now. Then sell the truck, I said. Sell the boat, sell the golf clubs, figure it out. That's what business owners do. I hung up. I realized something profound in that moment. For years, I thought I was supporting them because they were struggling. But they weren't struggling. They were incompetent, and I wasn't supporting them. I was enabling them. I was the only reason they had lasted this long. They didn't need a daughter. They needed a manager. And they had fired the only one they could afford. The collapse of the business was fast, but the collapse of the family's secrets was slower. It oozed out like black oil. It happened 2 weeks after the birthday party. Mark showed up at my house. It was 9 p.m. on a Wednesday. It was raining. I saw his headlights through the window. I hesitated to open the door. I didn't want a confrontation. I didn't want him screaming at me about ruining his inheritance. But when I turned on the porch light, I saw him standing there in the rain. He wasn't screaming. He was slumped over. He looked like a wet dog. He looked old. I opened the door. What do you want, Mark? He looked up at me. His eyes were red. Can I come in, please? Melissa kicked me out. I stepped back. 5 minutes. He walked into my kitchen. He sat at the table, the same table where my parents had borrowed my money 2 years ago. He put his head in his hands. It's gone, he said. The business. Dad met with the bankruptcy lawyer today. I didn't say anything. I put the kettle on for tea. Melissa left, he continued. She took Tyler. She said she didn't sign up for a broke husband. She called me a loser. I'm sorry, Mark, I said. I was sorry. No one deserves that. She was right, he whispered. I am a loser. I thought I was running things. Dad always told me I was the future. He said I had the vision. But when you left, I looked at the books, Grace. For the first time, I actually looked at the books. He looked up at me. There was shock in his face. They lied to me, he said. What do you mean? I asked. Last year, Mark said, his voice shaking. I asked Dad for money for a down payment on a new house. He gave me $20,000. He told me it was surplus profit. He told me the business was booming. I felt a cold chill. When was this? November, he said. Right after you asked for your money back the first time. I gripped the edge of the counter. In November, they had told me they couldn't pay my electric bill because cash was tight. But they gave Mark $20,000. There's more, Mark said. He told me he had already paid you back. He told me you were just being greedy. He said you were jealous of me, so you were trying to squeeze more money out of the company. My mouth fell open. He said that? Yes, Mark said. Tears started to run down his face. He told me you were vindictive. He said you were trying to sabotage my success. That's why I was so mean to you, Grace. That's why I let Tyler be mean. I thought you were the villain. I thought you were trying to hurt us. I sat down opposite him. The anger I felt toward Mark evaporated. He wasn't just a bully. He was a puppet. My parents had played us against each other. They had fed his ego and starved mine, all to keep their secrets hidden. I never got a dime, I said quietly. They owe me $38,000. That was Nathan's college fund. Mark squeezed his eyes shut. I know, I saw the ledger. I saw the loan entry. It's still there, unpaid. And I saw the withdrawal for my down payment. It came out of the operating account the same week you asked for repayment. He looked at me, and for the first time in his life, he looked at me with respect. And shame. I'm sorry, Grace, he choked out. I am so sorry for the party, for Nathan, for everything I didn't know. You should have known, I said. I wasn't going to let him off that easy. You were a grown man, Mark. You should have looked. I know, he said. I was lazy. I liked being the golden boy. It was easier to believe them. He took a deep breath. I told Dad I'm done. I walked out today. I told him he's a liar. I told him he stole from you to pay me, and I won't be part of it. I reached across the table. I didn't hug him. We weren't there yet, but I put my hand on his arm. Thank you for telling me, I said. Mark stayed on my couch that night. For the first time in 30 years, we were on the same team. The team of the disillusioned children. The fallout was ugly. It was small-town ugly, which is the worst kind. Word got around that Walker Plumbing was done. People talk. The employees who lost their jobs, good guys like Steve the warehouse manager, they talked. They told everyone that James Walker had run the business into the ground while taking European cruises. My parents stopped going to church. They couldn't handle the looks. They couldn't handle the whispers. Their reputation, which they valued more than their children, was shredded. I received a letter in the mail a week after Mark came to my house. It was a physical letter, written on my dad's personalized stationery. I stood by the mailbox at the end of my driveway and opened it. Grace, I hope you are happy. You have successfully destroyed the legacy that my father built. You turned your brother against us. You humiliated us in front of the community. You are cold and heartless. We are selling the business. It is a fire sale. We will get pennies on the dollar because of the mess you left us in. We are forced to sell the house too. We are moving to a condo in Florida. We cannot show our faces here. You have one. You have your revenge. I hope the money keeps you warm at night because you have no family left. Dad, I read the letter twice. A year ago, this letter would have broken me. I would have fallen to my knees in the driveway and cried. I would have driven to their house and begged for forgiveness. But standing there in the sunshine, listening to the birds chirp, I felt something different. I started to laugh. It wasn't a crazy laugh. It was a release. It was the sound of a prisoner realizing the cell door had been unlocked the whole time. He was blaming me. Even now, at the bitter end, he couldn't take responsibility. He couldn't admit that he was bad with money. He couldn't admit he lied. He had to make me the villain because if I wasn't the villain, then he was. And his ego couldn't survive that. I didn't destroy the legacy, Dad, I whispered to the empty air. It was rotten wood. I just stopped painting over the termites. I walked back into my house. I put the letter in a drawer. I didn't burn it. I kept it. I wanted a reminder. I wanted proof that I had made the right choice. Later that day, I went to pick up Nathan from school. I saw Tyler sitting on the bench waiting for Melissa. He looked sad. He wasn't the loud, arrogant kid from the party. He looked small. Nathan saw him too. Mom, Nathan said, can I say hi to Tyler? I hesitated. He was very mean to you, Nate. I know, Nathan said, but he looks lonely. And Uncle Mark said Tyler is having a hard time. My son, he had a heart bigger than the ocean. He was 10 years old, and he had more emotional maturity than my parents combined. Okay, I said. 2 minutes? Nathan ran over to the bench. I watched from the car. I saw Nathan say something. I saw Tyler look up, surprised. Then, slowly, Tyler nodded. Nathan reached into his backpack and pulled out a small bag of gummies. He offered them to Tyler. Tyler took one. They sat there for a moment, chewing gummies in silence. Cousins, when Nathan came back to the car, he was smiling. What did you say? I asked. I told him that pirates have to stick together, Nathan said. And I told him that his dad is staying at our house, so maybe he can come play video games this weekend. I teared up. You're a good man, Nathan Walker. I know, he said simply. The end came in the form of a certified check. It arrived 3 months after the birthday party. My parents had sold the business assets to the competitor. They had sold their large house with the pool and the manicured lawn. They were packing for Florida. I opened the envelope. Inside was a check for exactly $38,000, not a penny more for interest. Not a penny for the years of free labor. Attached was a yellow sticky note. It had my mother's handwriting. This is the last thing we will ever owe you. We are done. I held the check. It was just a piece of paper, but it represented my freedom. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel like jumping up and down. I just felt a deep, quiet relief. The debt was paid. The connection was severed. I drove to the bank immediately. I deposited the money directly into Nathan's college savings account. I watched the teller stamp the receipt. All set, she smiled. Thank you, I said. You have no idea. That weekend, Mark was still staying in my guest room, but he was looking for an apartment. He had found a job as a salesman at a car dealership. He was good at talking to people, and he was actually working hard. He was trying to win Melissa back, but he was also trying to be a better father to Tyler. Tyler came over on Saturday. I was in the kitchen making lunch when I looked out the window. Nathan and Tyler were in the backyard. They had the old cardboard boxes out. They were building something. I walked out to the porch with lemonade. What are you guys building? I asked. Tyler looked up. He looked nervous around me still, but he was trying. We're building a new ship, Aunt Grace, since I broke the last one. It's bigger, Nathan said proudly. We used duct tape this time, it's stronger. What are you going to name it? I asked. Nathan looked at me. The stronger one, I smiled. That's a perfect name. Mark came out and stood beside me. He watched the boys play. They're resilient, Mark said. Kids, they bounce back. So do we, I said, if we choose to. Did you hear from them? Mark asked. He meant Mom and Dad. I got the check, I said. And a note saying they are done with me. Mark nodded. They sent me a text, said they were disappointed in me, said I let a woman control me. He laughed bitterly. They really don't get it. No, I said, they don't. And they never will. That's why we have to let them go. We watched the boys running around the yard, swords made of foam in their hands, fighting invisible monsters. They were loud. They were messy. They were happy. "I'm glad you threw them out," Mark said suddenly. "Me too," I said. "It has been 6 months since the birthday party. My parents are in Florida. I haven't spoken to them. I heard from a cousin that they tell everyone down there that their children are ungrateful and greedy. It doesn't bother me anymore. I can't control their story. I can only live mine." Mark and Melissa are separated, but they are co-parenting. Mark comes over for dinner every Sunday. He pays for the groceries. He actually does the dishes. We are building a relationship, not as the golden boy and the fixer, but as brother and sister. Tyler and Nathan are best friends. It's not perfect. They fight, they argue, but it's real. Tyler is learning that he doesn't have to be a bully to be strong. He sees his dad working hard, being humble, and it's changing him. And me. I got a promotion at work. My boss told me I seemed more focused and more confident. It's true. When you stop carrying the weight of 2 grown adults on your back, you stand taller. I still have moments where I miss them. I miss the idea of them. I miss the parents I wanted them to be. I miss the fantasy of the big, happy family sitting around the Thanksgiving table. But then I look at my life. It is quiet. There is no drama. There are no frantic phone calls about unpaid bills. There are no insults disguised as jokes. I have my son. I have my brother. I have my self-respect. Last night, Nathan asked me a question. "Mom," he said, tucking himself into bed. "Are we a broken family?" I looked at him. I smoothed the hair back from his forehead. "No, sweetie," I said. "We were broken. Now we are healing. We are just smaller. And sometimes smaller is better because it's solid." "It's real." He smiled and closed his eyes. I walked out of his room and turned off the hall light. I walked to the front door and checked the lock. It was a habit now. But it wasn't a lock to keep people out anymore. It was a lock to keep my peace in. I sat down at my computer to write this. I wanted to tell you my story because I know I am not alone. I know there are other fixers out there. Other people who are drowning to keep their families afloat. If you are reading this and you feel that heavy weight on your chest, put it down. You are allowed to lock the door. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to demand what is yours. My name is Grace Walker. I lost my parents, but I found myself. And that was a trade worth making. My son is safe. My life is quiet. And for the first time, the story is mine. If this hit you, like, subscribe and stay with us for the next chapter.